Welcome to the Fluid Marketing Podcast, where we talk with industry professionals about what they're doing tactic-wise in the digital marketing space. I'm your host, Paul Matthew, a video marketing specialist that specializes in creating video that is going to generate sales for your business. Today I have a special guest, Cameron Versluis. He has developed his own web design company, and it's seen massive success. He's done such great work. He's helped me design my website, and he's helped a lot of the community professionals. So, Cameron, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Sure. So we do a lot of stuff. We start out primarily by asking the question, what is going to make this website a success or make this project a success? So that's actually going to take us in a lot of different directions, because some people will simply say, we want better branding. Branding is really, really, really important, because after all, marketing is like asking someone on a date. Branding is a reason they say yes. So oftentimes the goal is just to create a really beautiful online presence that matches what they and their core demographic wants. Other times, they want very specific functionality or they want more traffic. So if they want specific functionality, they might say something like, hey, we are experiencing a lot of work. We're just doing a lot of work because we're not automated. We're doing this and this and that. When orders come in, we have to paste them to this Excel spreadsheet over here and, all this type of stuff. And so automating a lot of that or creating functionality or new membership software, things like that can be really helpful. And then sometimes, we are just, essentially helping people to actually grow their business, helping them to increase their audience, and that's kind of another thing entirely. So it's kind of all wrapped into one, but I think the biggest question is like, what actually would make this successful? And you can ask that not only of the client, but you should be asking that of their primary stakeholders as well before you start on any project.
Yeah, absolutely. You actually answered one of my questions, which was the difference between branding and marketing. Can you explore that a little bit more?
Yeah. I would say there's a few different components to that. First off, marketing is like asking someone on a date. Branding is the reason they say yes. Branding is how you look and feel and associate and dress and color yourself and the feeling that you give people. People never, ever, ever buy because of logic, okay? They buy based on emotion. They work with you based on emotion, and they use logical reasons to support that emotion, to justify making the decision that they're making. So giving someone a feeling when they interact with your brand is very, very, very important. And a lot of times people miss that because branding and marketing are often not associated with conversion data. You want me to just go on that here?
I was just going to ask, how can people create a feeling with their company? What are some tactics that you could employ in a digital marketing space to provide that emotional compelling to your audience?
Yeah, well, I think essentially the look and feel of everything that you're doing plays so much into it. Lots of things, such as like when people are searching you, what images come up when they search, your company.
I think we've all Googled ourselves at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. What's on the first page? Because that's what people are seeing when they're Googling your company. Mm-hmm. Are they seeing a clear description of you when they look you up?
And this also comes back to like personal branding and just yourself in general, because if you post a lot of nonsense on your Facebook, even though that's like on your Facebook, some of those Facebook images come in on your Google search, because I will Google search myself, and that's something I posted on my personal Facebook page, and it's a Google image result. So being conscious of where that information's going at all times and controlling that flow of information is so important.
Well, and I see that happen to companies a lot. Companies will end up with images on Google Images that are getting pulled from forums or something like that. And people understand that, right? It's not like people think that everything you Google is directly associated with that company. But the overall emotion and aesthetic that you get when you see everything from the typography to the colors to the images chosen. Hey, are these people diverse enough to represent a wide range of different walks of life? Do these people look kind of like me?
How would you control that? So say someone post something about your company that's negative, what would be a way that you could counter that? Because that's something a bit out of your control.
Well, where are they posting it?
It could be to social media, to a forum, because all this information gets pulled from all these sources. It's not just the website that you've created. So if someone's, say, an employee at your store posts something that trashes your store, and you wanted to control that image, since now that's what's circulating, and there's a lot of problems with that in the media that we see. Where I remember a few years ago there was someone that posted them taking a bath in the fryer at the restaurant that they worked at, and that was bad press. The person got let go. So I guess my question is, what could we do as business owners to help control that?
Well, I think you have to start from assuming you're going to have something like that happen at some point. Right? If you're a big enough company and you touch enough people, you are going to have some sort of PR scandal, some sort of somebody posts a negative review, something bad is going to happen online to you, right? So just assuming that, what you need to do is instead build as much positive content as possible so that you can drown that out. Right? So, for instance, we have so many Google reviews. If somebody left us a negative Google review, we would still have 5 stars.
And it would be unauthentic if you had no bad reviews. It can actually help you. You have to have like I think 90-10% between positive and negative, because if you inflate your reviews with fake reviews and skyrocket, people are going to notice, okay, why is there nothing bad? That's a little weird versus having some negative feedback.
Sure, yeah, but if you spend a lot of time working on, getting positive reviews, and then so let's just say you get a negative review, right? There's a lot of stuff you can do with that. Typically, people who leave really bad reviews, like 1-star reviews, are really irritated about one particular thing. Right? It's not an overall reflection of the quality or service of your company. It's just they got really, really mad about something, and they decided, because they were teed off, to go get on the internet and vent about it. Oftentimes, those people will leave a string of 1-star reviews on lots of different companies. So if you can engage them respectfully and just reply to them, that's really helpful. It's great if you can actually find who that customer is and then go back and do damage control with that customer. Call them up personally, apologize, offer a refund, do anything you can to make it right. And then sometimes they'll even take that review down. But you have to have lots of positive reviews and positive content to offset that type of stuff. If you're just sitting there with 0 Google reviews, you're a sitting duck.
Yeah.
The first person who comes along is going to completely review bomb you.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. If you just have one, it's going to have a lot more weight than 20. But also, what would be some guidelines for how you could respond to reviews? Should you respond to all reviews, or should there be a criteria for responding to their reviews?
I believe you should respond to all reviews with a thank you, with a, hey, it was great working with you, with a looking forward to our next project in February, whatever you happen to be saying. So
what if it's like a troll or something, like someone that maybe not even someone who used your service or heard about it through somebody else and is trash talking you without context? Like, should you respond to those too?
I mean, I think you should, just from the perspective of, I'm the business owner, and I'm letting people know that I have heard this comment and that I think it is trolling for what reason, right? So you can call out the insensitivity or the just illogical nature of trolls. You definitely don't want to egg them on. Like, don't start with a flame. I wouldn't respond 2 or 3 times to a troll. If they respond to your comment and then you respond to them and they respond, it's very clear that you're in an ego battle at that point. So it's good to leave a polite response. Always polite. Always stay polite, stay civil. Don't let them drag you down to their level, and then just let it go after that.
Okay. I've heard in some areas people advise not to respond to, say, this wouldn't necessarily be in the reviews, but with social media, there are companies that they respond actively to a lot of different comments, but they don't justify responding to all comments, so they have a criteria. Right. Is that something you should apply to only comments, or should that apply to reviews too?
Well, I think we're talking. Yeah, so I think we're talking about two different things.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there's Google reviews, right? And I've primarily been thinking in the frame of Google reviews.
Right. And I'm wondering if that framework applies or has any crossover.
You don't need to reply to all comments.
Okay.
there's no need to reply to all comments or everything on social media.
What about like a review that is only
stars?
No actual review.
Sure. I don't think there's a need to respond to that.
Okay.
I mean, they didn't provide a comment about anything. It's not like, but if somebody comes in and says, hey, let's just say you're a restaurant.
Yeah.
And somebody comes in and says, hey, the kitchen is super unsanitary, maybe they saw like one thing out of context and they were having a really bad day and they just decided to jump on that for whatever reason, right? And that your kitchen is clean and you are inspected regularly, you're keeping up with all of the regulations, you are doing a really good job training everybody, you're cleaner than 90% of the kitchens in the area. You can respond and you can say all that, and just let people know that that's just somebody having a bad day. But you know what, like, you don't need to respond to anything. And I guess the criteria, it would be hard to determine, but it probably is there value in leaving a response to this? That's probably the only criteria.
I want to kind of segue from Google reviews
Sure.
and listing your business with Google, because maybe some people have no idea where they could even direct people. Like, okay, where's Google reviews? If you aren't listed, you probably don't even know where to find that information. So what's the process for that?
Yeah. So if you go to business.google.com, that's going to be your gateway. So you definitely want to add a Google listing. You can literally just Google add a Google business listing and just click on the links. They'll show you how and get started.
Why is that so important to your business? Like, what if you don't have a Google business listing, what are you missing out on?
Primarily geographically based opportunities and reviews.
Which is huge for local businesses.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if you're a local business, you want to be listed.
Exactly. Yeah. If you have a service radius whatsoever, or you prefer to serve clients within an area, even if you technically we serve clients internationally, mostly nationally, but we have some international clients, but still so much of our business occurs within a radius of where we're actually physically located. It's useful for us to have a business listing and all that type of stuff. And as we consider adding offices elsewhere, we'll add locations basically. But that allows, when people are Googling, or they're on their phone and they're looking up, restaurants, they get results near their area. If you're not listed on Google, you're not going to show up.
Yeah, and it gives you a competitive advantage. From what I understand, it's really, really hard to rank on Google in terms of SEO, which I want to talk about more later. But if you have your business located or registered on the map of Google Maps, now you're not competing on an SEO framework. You're competing on how close you are to that particular person who is searching for a restaurant in their area. So your competition is significantly decreased, and there's so many businesses that don't understand this, that if you just list your business, you're going to beat out your neighbors by 100%. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a component of search engine optimization, and it's a huge component.
Okay, and so with SEO, now not everybody understands that. If you're a business owner, you've probably got a million things going on. So how can someone get started with SEO? What are the fundamental things that they need to know about that?
Well, so the biggest thing you'll want to know about SEO is that topical content authorities win, period. So essentially, if you are putting out regular content about a particular topic, you are going to win. That's just how it works. Google is looking for people who have websites that are experts on a particular topic.
So how could someone start to create that content with limited resources?
Right. So essentially the idea is to create buzz as much as possible, right? With limited resources, I think it depends on what resource you're limited in, right? Like if you're limited in money, then you should start posting your own stuff. The easiest way you could do that, would probably be, to take a video of yourself talking about particular topics, or let's just go with the restaurant example again. You could take a video of, some of the dishes you're offering, and then real quick write out a description of that. Just posting regular content is the most important thing.
And there are like websites for freelancers like Fiverr where you can get affordable content writers. Would you recommend a small business owner to hire out some writers to start creating content if they have a little bit of money but not a lot of time?
Yes, I would recommend that. I would say slightly cautiously, your reputation can be damaged if...
Well, you can approve of the stuff before it goes live.
Oh, of course.
So you can have them write it, and if you're like, this is garbage, this person clearly doesn't know my industry, then you'd be like, I'm not posting that. And you would be out some money. Maybe you could argue it or get revisions, but I would say you wouldn't just want to have somebody post that on your behalf, but you could outsource the legwork.
Absolutely. So if you are not great with grammar, you shouldn't be the one approving it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, so you're not talking about like content.
No.
You're talking about grammar, spelling.
Yeah.
Are those concerns that you would find with writers?
Absolutely. I know tons. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So you can't trust someone to be competent in the basic level of writing when you hire a writer?
I know tons of business owners who are absolute geniuses, like certifiable genius, and they can't spell.
But I'm talking about the writers that they hire.
And there are writers who are outsourced from other countries who can't spell or write in English very well, and the business owner can't tell because they don't remember the time problem, right? So they don't have time to approve it, and they don't really have time to look it over, and maybe they're a genius, but they don't have the grammar skills to be able to notice that it's kind of embarrassing. Right.
Yeah.
So as long as as long as there's a content positive, like a filter somewhere,
right?
Somebody's got to be making.
So you
sure
can maybe hire an employee that you're like, you understand English. Read this. Yeah, just check. Just check it.
They go out.
Yeah. So maybe you could just delegate that to somebody if you don't.
Totally.
If you don't have the skill set or time to do that yourself.
Totally. They can even find your content writer for you. Yeah, but there's a couple components of that though, right? So you've got SEO, right? So you could put out content every day, and if you're not aimed very well, it's like a machine gun pointing the wrong direction.
Right.
Right. If you don't have good keyword research done, you're literally just firing off all this time and money and work.
So explain keyword research for our listeners that might not know what that means.
Absolutely. So keyword research is essentially when you do research to figure out what keywords are going to be most relevant to your business or the industry you're trying to target. So basically, you're looking for keywords that have a high search volume. So high search volume, but an achievable placement difficulty.
What are those numbers look like? What would constitute as a high volume number?
Well, it really depends on what you're trying to target. So essentially, you could have a number like, 400,000 people a month search this, and that's great. But your difficulty is so high to rank for that because everybody's spending millions of dollars in that arena to try to get to the front page, so you're never going to make it.
It's like trying to rank for the word shoe when your competitor is Nike. They have deep pockets, and they're going to outrank you every time.
Exactly. but you could certainly,
Tell us about long tail keywords.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah. So how could... Because maybe someone doesn't understand that. They think they need to rank for shoe because they're a shoe store.
Sure.
And then what would you recommend that someone actually do if they are a smaller business?
Find a keyword that is regularly searched, okay? But it's searched less often. So basically, if you look at
the word keyword might be confusing because you want a string of words. It's not just one word.
Right.
So
key phrase.
Yes. So think more of a key phrase if that's confusing to any of our listeners.
That is a super great clarification.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah. So keyword or key phrase. So find a keyword or key phrase that is searched regularly. You might have one that's like searched like 40 times a month, right? And that's it. But every single one of those people is ready to buy. That is a good keyword. It's a long tail keyword because if you look at the, the search volume, normal, high ranking keywords are up here. And then these that go out this way, those are on the long tail.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, those are on the long tail. And so that's why they're called long tail keywords. They're searched a lot less. But they are still searched. So maybe you have 40 people a month who are looking for, laces for Converse XYZ, right? So maybe they're really going after that, and you can provide an article or even a product that will fit that niche.
Comparisons are a really powerful thing. So if you have two products that people are looking between, that's a sign that they are in the buying phase. If they're looking at pros and cons between this product and this product, now you're going to have a much higher intent. So that would be a good example. So for me, as if I were to talk about camera gear, 2 new cameras just came out, and there's buyers that are trying to decide which one they want. And I used my expertise to write, hey, I tried this camera out and I tried this camera out. Here's what I think of both. And you see a lot of this content because it works. People want to know, and then they'll read that article. And then hopefully, if you're maybe an affiliate marketer, they're going to use your link to buy it. Otherwise, if you're a retailer that sells that, maybe they'll buy it from your store, especially if you offer a discount to your readers, something like that. So there's different tactics that you could use. How do you feel about those?
Oh, if you can get a comparison article and you can get somebody to read that, they're totally in the buying phase. And if you can sell both of the products that you're comparing, or you can at least
you win either way,
one and sell the other, or you can affiliate to both or sell both, whatever. You're coming out ahead, assuming that you can beat out the money you spent on advertising,
right?
With the affiliate link.
No, I'm just curious. What if you were more bent towards a certain direction? Like you're coming back to the camera example. Maybe you're this Sony writer that always writes about Sony cameras. Now you're comparing this new Sony camera versus the Panasonic camera. Would you say that would be a good strategy if you promoted the Sony camera? Because people are clicking on SonyCameraReviewer.com probably already have a bent about the Sony camera and may want justification. So more people searching for rationalization of what they want to do. What do you think about doing that? That's just something I was thinking of top of head.
Well, that goes back to one of the fundamentals of sales, right? You have to believe in what you're buying.
Yeah, confirmation bias, basically.
Yeah. You have to believe in what you're selling.
Yeah.
And so if you have a Sony, you have a bent towards Sony, and you're trying to sell Nikon, you're not really being authentic, and that's going to come through in your brand.
More like talking about like a generic selling both and you win either way, or would it be more powerful to be in the niche and work on that confirmation bias rather than research?
Work on the confirmation bias.
Okay.
People want to be right.
Yeah.
and particularly if they're really undecided and they really just want some help with it, they want somebody to, strongly guide them. Everybody wants someone to guide them. Never forget that. That's one of the most important tenets of marketing and sales. People want a guide.
So your headliner could be more written in a way of 9 reasons you should buy this over that, and that's going to attract the audience that you want, the ones that want confirmation bias, or maybe want to see what the devil's advocate says.
Specifically with this example, though, I do think there is a lot more like logical thought processes behind people who go and look at this type of thing, right? Like if they're looking for a camera or whatever, they do have an emotional reason for buying, right? Maybe, they're interested in using that camera for their startup video business, or they're really hoping to get a better, picture on the little picture-in-picture thing than they did with their last camera or something like that. They're hoping to get something emotionally. But that being said, they are going to be a little bit more, they're going to sniff out like inauthenticity, like 9 reasons the Sony is the best ever, They're going to smell that. So like you can certainly skew one direction, but there is something to be said about testing how far.
Yeah. Okay. And what would be some limitations that you would apply as a guideline for yourself if you were in this space? What are some of those boundaries you don't want to cross?
Specifically selling cameras?
In general, like what maybe a formula for how you could define what's too far in your industry?
There's no formula.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely not a formula. I think, it does depend on your audience demographic. If they're very insecure and they really, really want to be guided, there's you can go as far as you want. There's a reason advertisements like there's a reason advertisements like get a free iPad work, right? Because some people do latch onto that. It really depends on your user demographic. And I think like how far is too far, like is something you have to test, in terms of how overt you want to be with
testing
your
is
messaging.
So important. That's something we haven't really talked about, but even just having those two different articles and testing, seeing what outperforms, always having multiple things to look at and not putting all your eggs in one basket and saying, well, this is probably what's going to work, so we're just going to go all in. But like, take your top two and then see what performs better.
Can I make a note on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I see this all the time. The mistake I see constantly with testing is testing things that are not equal. Okay? So for instance, I say, I'm going to write this review, right, of Sony versus versus Nikon, and this Sony camera versus this Nikon camera, and I write a review and I say I'm going to test my headline, and so for 1 month I try one headline, and for another month I try another headline. That's crazy, because how are you supposed to know that November's traffic and December's traffic are going to be the same, or that people are even going to be in the same psyche?
Well, you'd have to have some way of controlling that. So maybe not publishing 2 articles on your website, because that would just get confusing and look weird. But anything you could segment. So whether that's social media advertising, an email list, something that you can take 2 sample audiences that aren't going to overlap. And so I think that's an important thing to know, and I appreciate that clarification, is that you do need to have those measures to control your testing.
Yeah, and it's called A/B testing.
Yeah,
so version
exactly.
A versus version B, how do they do? And so like you can test, like for instance, if you wanted to test like December last year versus December this year, if you've been marketing for 10 years and you know that your Decembers are pretty similar, you could do that somewhat legitimately, but the best thing to do would be to A/B test it and like actually have 50% of your copies of this ad with a different headline, or 50% of your copies get sent out of the website with a different tagline on it or a different picture or something like that. So, and don't test too many variables at once.
Yeah, you only want to test one variable, otherwise your information's inconsistent. Yeah. You don't know what variable changed the response. Speaking of testing, you told me a while back that when you do graphic design, you hire a graphic designer and you design your own, and then you figure out which one you like best. Explain that process. How has that helped you?
Yeah, so I have a lot of fun with that. So I do essentially design contests. I don't do every single logo or design that comes out of the company, but oftentimes if we're doing like new branding for a client, I enjoy like just hiring a couple local designers and then basically having a face-off with them. I won't tell the client or any audience groups that we're testing it with. I won't tell them which design is mine, but I do win fairly frequently.
So you have the client decide which one they like.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, okay, am I a good graphic designer, or is the professional a better graphic designer? And you let the client decide, and that's how you test
offering
it.
them options.
Yeah. So do you ever do it internally, like decide, I like my design better, or are you worried about your bias towards your own design?
I would say the best thing to do, like, so like, it depends on the client's budget, right? So like the best thing to do is to have actual users in that demographic look at them all and decide which one they like, which is what we just did with logo package we just did the other day. I won, by the way. I don't always win. I lose a lot too. But so that's the best thing to do. second best is to have the client decide. And the reason I say that is because it's very, very important to have a brand that you are proud of. You know what I mean? So the client should absolutely like it. You should love the brand that you represent. And if you don't, you're not going to put the energy into distributing your logo and all that. Just don't make it too big.
Yeah. The logo should be very simple and should look good in one color. That's the graphic design advice I've been given.
Yeah, well, that follows the trend of minimalism. So back in the 90s, they did a lot of... How are we doing on time, by the way?
Yeah, we're going to wrap up here in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
But...
So back in the 90s, they did a lot of, like, skeuomorphic design. And skeuomorphic design is, like, we're like, designing something as if you're there. So, like, we'll have, we'll draw, like, a table, very photorealistic or whatever, or it's an illustration of a table, and then we'll put all your stuff on there, and then all the stuff is the links on the webpage or whatever. That's like skeuomorphic design kind of. And then like minimalist design took over, and so minimalist design has very much been flat, very vector based, so it's not a lot of pixel based. It's a lot of like line and point based drawings.
Yeah. Explain for our audience listeners, explain the difference between vector and pixel. Like if I create something in Photoshop versus something in Illustrator, why would it be important for me to build my graphic design in Illustrator, a vector based program, over Photoshop, a pixel based program?
Yeah, so basically, first off, if you ever ask for a logo design and you get a PSD or a JPEG, you didn't pick the right designer.
That's bad. If you're getting a PNG and that's all you have, then what's the main problem with
Unless they're trying to upsell you to that. But so essentially when like a PNG or JPEG or something designed in Photoshop is done, they're squares, okay? Right? So it's square pixels that are put together, and that's how the image data is saved. Now that's great until you have an image this size and you have to blow it up on a billboard.
Exactly.
Sweet. Now it looks terrible because you can see all the pixels.
Yeah, it always bothers me when people create graphic design and they like shift the images, they stretch it out and force it to fit. And then it's also the resolution is low, and like that's a huge sign that you don't know what you're doing.
My life mission is to not have that happen anywhere near me. I don't want to see that at all.
And then pair that with Comic Sans.
Oh, wow. All right, wow. So coming back to vectors. So the way vector graphics are saved, they are saved with points and lines. So basically, it just contains the data about how the points are supposed to form the shape, if that makes sense. The shapes.
Yeah, and that's how you can stretch it to any size, because it's not resolution based. It's based on the math of what that curve looked like. Is that correct?
You could print it on a planet if you had a printer big enough.
You can zoom in infinitely and it will look clean and crisp. So we're just about out of time, but the last thing I wanted to talk about before we go is when it comes to websites, what would you say is the primary reason someone should hire a web designer over doing something self-service such as Squarespace or Wix, which are very popular? What are the pros and cons of each of those?
Well, so first off, anytime you're working with a program, and I'm not opposed to Squarespace, Wix, that type of thing. I think they can be a really good fit for some people, especially if there's a limited budget or.
Well, they're actually more expensive than developing your own website. If you develop it yourself, web designer is going to be more expensive. But if there is a learning curve, but if you can get past the learning curve, it's actually a lot cheaper to build your own website and host it than it is to pay a $30 subscription to a drag and drop builder.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and I think the main thing is extensibility, right? So if you go build something in Squarespace, and then later you want to add a membership component, or you want to have it, talk to an API or something like that, or you'd even like to include some advanced some form automation so you don't have to do the Excel spreadsheet thing all the time. You're just not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to move to another platform. And I think the other thing is, like, it doesn't really matter what tool is being used. I'm a little bit tool agnostic. I love WordPress, but we'll also use Shopify. We'll use we'll use Squarespace sometimes, I mean, we're a little bit tool agnostic, but the main thing is that the person who is doing it should have a really good understanding of responsiveness. That is huge.
A defined responsiveness.
Responsiveness is it looks good on every single screen all the time.
Especially with how many different screens we have these days.
Everything from an iPhone 5, tiny little iPhone 5, to a 4K monitor.
I've been to websites where you go on, you pull it up on your phone, and their text is like still the paragraph, so you have to like side scroll to read it, and then side scroll back, and like nobody wants to go to a website like that. That's just a pain to navigate. Usually you see that formatting off, you bounce back. And speaking of bounce backs, you can measure that as a web designer, so you can look at, maybe even if you want a proof, look at the comparison bounce rates between a formatted website, a non-responsive, and a responsive website. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, well over 50% of traffic is on mobile. Depending on your industry, it can be as high as 80% or more of your traffic is just on mobile, and that is really honestly what makes or breaks a good web designer or developer today. How good is their mobile version? And there's a lot of web designers who are presenting these beautiful, desktop versions to clients.
Because that's where they're looking at. The business owners on their desktop look at, this is so cool. This is so beautiful. And then they get a crap on their mobile phone.
But now we're actually starting to kind of go the other way. We just did our first UX redevelopment where we presented the client with only mobile designs. They approved that, and the desktop designs will come now that the mobile designs are approved. We went mobile first, and I think that's probably going to be our trend significantly. So
I think that's so important, because that's
component.
Really where everyone's at, is just mobile these days.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about your web design and all these other topics that we discussed. It was great. Do you have any closing remarks you want to say to the audience before we go?
I don't think so. I just really appreciate being here, and thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for listening in to the Digital Marketing Fluid podcast. We'll see you guys next time.